Welcome, brave souls, to Dreadful Diaries, where the shadows whisper secrets and the night holds untold horrors. If you crave the thrill of the unknown, make sure to subscribe and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. Now, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dive into our first tale of terror.
It was a chilly October evening when Jake, a seasoned pizza delivery driver, received a call that would change his life forever. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the streets of his small town. He had just finished a delivery when the order came through, a large pepperoni pizza to a house on the outskirts of town. The address seemed oddly familiar, but he brushed it off as a coincidence. As he drove, the trees lining the road began to sway ominously in the wind, and a sense of unease settled in his stomach. He arrived at the house, a quaint, old Victorian that looked like it had been plucked from a different era. The porch creaked under his weight as he approached the door, and he knocked. Moments later, it swung open to reveal a woman in her late 30s, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been waiting for this." Jake handed her the pizza, and as she paid, he noticed something strange about her. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, as if they had met before. He shook off the feeling and left, but as he drove away, he couldn't shake the sense of déjà vu. The next night, he received another order for the same house. This time, the customer was a man in his 40s, looking equally anxious. "You need to leave," he warned, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "It's not safe here." Jake felt a chill run down his spine but dismissed it as a prank. The following night, he returned again, this time to find a teenage girl waiting at the door. She looked terrified, her hands shaking as she took the pizza. "You have to get out of here," she pleaded. "You don't understand." Each night, the same pattern repeated. Different customers, all warning him to leave before it was too late. Each time, he felt a growing sense of dread, but he couldn't understand why he kept returning. The house seemed to draw him in, like a moth to a flame. On the fifth night, Jake arrived to find the house shrouded in darkness. The porch light flickered ominously, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. He knocked, but no one answered. Hesitant, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and shadows danced along the walls. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. Suddenly, he heard a whisper, soft and haunting, "You shouldn't have come back." Panic surged through him as he turned to leave, but the door slammed shut. He was trapped. The walls seemed to close in around him, and he felt a wave of despair wash over him. In that moment, he realized he was caught in a time loop, forced to relive the same night over and over. Desperate to escape, he searched the house for a way out. He stumbled upon a dusty old mirror in the hallway. As he looked into it, he saw not just his reflection but the faces of all the customers he had encountered. They were trapped too, their eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "Help us," they whispered in unison. "Break the cycle." Jake's heart raced as he pieced together the truth. Each customer had been a victim of the house, trapped in their own time loops, unable to escape. He realized that he had to confront the source of the curse to free them all. With newfound determination, he returned to the living room, where he found a strange symbol etched into the floor. It pulsed with a dark energy, and he understood that this was the key to breaking the cycle. He knelt down and traced the symbol with his finger, reciting the words he had heard in his dreams. As he spoke, the house trembled, and the air crackled with energy. The shadows began to swirl around him, and he felt a force pulling him into the depths of the darkness. But he held firm, focusing on the faces of the customers, their eyes pleading for freedom. With a final surge of strength, he shouted the last words of the incantation. The house erupted in a blinding light, and for a moment, he felt weightless, as if he were floating between worlds. Then, everything went dark. When Jake opened his eyes, he found himself back in his car, parked outside the pizzeria. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the town. He felt a sense of relief wash over him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. As he stepped out of the car, he noticed a small piece of paper on the dashboard. It was a receipt for a pizza order, dated for the night he had just experienced. The address was the same, but the name on the receipt was different. It read, "The Holloway House." A chill ran down Jake's spine as he recognized the name. He had delivered to that house multiple times, but now it felt like a distant memory, a nightmare he had just escaped. Determined to put the experience behind him, Jake went about his day, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to return to the Holloway house. Something deep inside urged him to investigate further, to understand what had happened. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of him. He drove to the outskirts of town, the familiar road winding through the trees. As he approached the Victorian house, he felt a mix of dread and determination. The house stood silent, its windows dark, but he could sense a lingering energy, as if the air itself was charged with the remnants of the past. Jake stepped onto the porch, heart pounding. He knocked on the door, half expecting it to swing open as it had in his dreams. After a moment, it creaked open, revealing an empty hallway. He hesitated but stepped inside, the door closing behind him with a soft thud. The interior was just as he remembered, but it felt different, lighter, almost as if the oppressive weight of the curse had lifted. He wandered through the rooms, searching for any sign of the customers he had encountered. As he moved, he felt a strange warmth, as if the house was welcoming him back. In the living room, he found the old mirror again, its surface gleaming in the dim light. He approached it cautiously, and as he looked into it, he gasped. Instead of his reflection, he saw the faces of the customers, each one smiling, their eyes filled with gratitude. They were free. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the room, soft yet powerful. "Thank you, Jake. You broke the cycle. We are free now." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had freed them from their torment. But as he turned to leave, he noticed a small, flickering light in the corner of the room. It pulsed rhythmically, drawing him closer. As he approached, he realized it was a small, glowing orb, hovering just above the floor. It seemed to pulse with energy, and he felt an inexplicable connection to it. Reaching out, he touched the orb, and a rush of memories flooded his mind, visions of the customers, their lives, their struggles, and their ultimate release. In that moment, Jake understood that the orb was a manifestation of the house's energy, a remnant of the souls that had once been trapped within its walls. He felt a surge of compassion and purpose. He knew he had to protect this place, to ensure that no one else would fall victim to its dark history. With a newfound resolve, Jake stepped back from the orb, feeling a sense of closure. He turned to leave the house, but as he reached the door, he paused. He glanced back one last time, and the orb flickered brightly, as if bidding him farewell. As he walked away, he felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The Holloway house would no longer be a place of fear, it would be a sanctuary for those seeking solace. He vowed to return, to keep watch over it, ensuring that its dark past would never repeat itself. From that day forward, Jake became a guardian of the Holloway house, sharing its story with others and helping those in need. The time loop had taught him the value of compassion, the importance of connection, and the power of redemption. And though he would never forget the horrors he had faced, he knew that he had emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. It was a quiet Friday night when Mark, a pizza delivery driver, received an order that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The call came in just before closing time, a delivery to a secluded cabin deep in the woods. The address was unfamiliar, but the promise of a hefty tip lured him in. He grabbed the large pizza, still steaming, and set off into the darkness. As he drove along the winding dirt road, the trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky. The further he went, the more isolated he felt. The cabin finally came into view, a dilapidated structure that seemed to blend into the shadows. Mark parked and took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease that settled in his stomach. He approached the cabin, the wooden steps creaking under his weight. He knocked on the door, and it swung open to reveal a man dressed in dark robes, his eyes wide and intense. "You're here," the man exclaimed, a manic grin spreading across his face. "The pizza has arrived." Mark handed over the pizza, but as the man took the box, Mark caught a glimpse of what lay inside. The pizza was covered in strange symbols, drawn in what looked like a dark, viscous substance. But what truly sent a shiver down his spine were the eyes, dozens of them, peering up at him from the surface of the cheese, as if they were alive. "What the hell is this?" Mark stammered, stepping back instinctively. "It's a ritual pizza," the man declared, his voice rising with excitement. "Tonight, we summon the spirits of the forest. The eyes are a vital part of the incantation. They will help us see beyond the veil." Mark's heart raced. He had heard stories about cults and rituals in the woods, but he never thought he would encounter one. I think I should go," he stuttered, backing away from the door. "No. You must stay," the cultist insisted, his grip tightening on the pizza box. "You're part of this now. You can't leave." Panic surged through Mark as he turned to flee. He sprinted back to his car, the sound of the cultist's laughter echoing behind him. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking as he tried to unlock the door. Finally, he jumped inside and slammed the door shut, locking it just as the cultist reached the car. As he sped away, the headlights illuminated the trees, and Mark felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching him with 1,000 unseen eyes. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the cultist standing at the edge of the cabin, arms raised in a strange gesture, chanting something that sent a wave of dread through him. The road twisted and turned, and Mark drove faster than he ever had before, desperate to escape the nightmare he had stumbled into. But the feeling of being watched only intensified. Shadows danced in the trees, and he could swear he saw eyes peering out from the darkness, following him as he raced down the road. Finally, he reached the main road, the familiar lights of the town coming into view. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, but the sense of relief was short-lived. As he pulled into the parking lot of the pizzeria, he felt a cold breeze sweep through the car, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Mark rushed inside, his heart still pounding. He recounted the bizarre encounter to his co-workers, but they laughed it off, thinking he was just trying to scare them. "You probably just had a bad pizza," one of them joked. But Mark knew what he had seen, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there. That night, he tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made him jump. He kept imagining the eyes from the pizza, watching him from the shadows. As dawn broke, he decided to return to the cabin, determined to confront whatever had happened. When he arrived, the cabin looked abandoned, the door swinging slightly in the breeze. He stepped inside, heart racing, and found the pizza box still sitting on the table, untouched. The symbols were faded, and the eyes were gone, leaving only a greasy stain on the cardboard. "Hello?" he called out, but only silence answered. He searched the cabin, but it was empty. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed something glimmering in the corner of the room. It was a small, ornate mirror, covered in dust. As he wiped it clean, he gasped at what he saw. Reflected in the mirror were the eyes, dozens of them, staring back at him from the darkness of the woods. They were watching, waiting. Mark stumbled back, realizing that the eyes were not just a figment of his imagination, they were real, and they were connected to the ritual that had taken place. Panic surged through him as he turned to flee the cabin, but the door slammed shut on its own, trapping him inside. The air grew thick and heavy, and he could hear whispers echoing around him, a cacophony of voices chanting in a language he couldn't understand. The walls seemed to pulse, and the shadows deepened, closing in around him. "Let us see you," the voices hissed, and Mark felt a cold breeze brush against his skin. He stumbled backward, his heart racing as he realized he was not alone. The eyes from the pizza were now manifesting in the shadows, swirling around him like a dark cloud, watching him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Desperate to escape, Mark remembered the mirror. He rushed back to it, hoping it held the key to breaking whatever hold the spirits had over him. As he gazed into the glass, he saw not just his reflection but the faces of the cultist and the other figures who had participated in the ritual. They were trapped, their eyes wide with fear, pleading for release. "Help us," they cried in unison, their voices merging into a haunting melody. "You must complete the ritual." Mark's mind raced. He didn't want to be part of this madness, but he realized that he had a choice. He could either succumb to the fear and let the spirits consume him, or he could confront the darkness and try to set them free. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the mirror and the faces within. "What do I need to do?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the small cabin. The whispers grew louder, and the eyes surrounding him seemed to pulse in response. "Recite the incantation," the voices urged. "Only then can we be released." With trembling hands, Mark reached for the symbols on the pizza box, now etched in his memory. He closed his eyes and began to chant the words he had heard the cultist say. As he spoke, the air around him crackled with energy, and the eyes began to swirl faster, forming a vortex of light and shadow. The cabin shook, and the whispers turned into a deafening roar. Mark felt a surge of power coursing through him, and he poured every ounce of his will into the incantation. The mirror glowed brighter, reflecting the chaos around him, and he could see the spirits beginning to break free from their bonds. "Release us," they cried, their voices rising in a crescendo. "We are free." With one final shout, Mark completed the incantation, and the cabin erupted in a blinding light. The eyes dissolved into the air, and the spirits surged forward, breaking free from the confines of the cabin. He felt a rush of wind as they passed through him, filling him with warmth and relief. As the light faded, Mark found himself standing alone in the cabin, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The mirror was now just a simple piece of glass, reflecting the empty room. He felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing he had helped the spirits find their freedom. Exhausted but relieved, Mark stepped outside into the sunlight. The woods felt different now, the shadows less menacing, the air lighter. He took a deep breath, grateful to be alive and free from the horrors of the night. As he drove back to town, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had changed. The experience had opened his eyes to the unseen world around him, and he knew he would never look at a pizza delivery the same way again. He had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, a guardian of the stories that lay hidden in the shadows. From that day forward, Mark became more than just a pizza delivery driver. He became a storyteller, sharing his experience with others and reminding them that sometimes, the most extraordinary things can happen in the most ordinary of places. And as for the cabin in the woods, it stood silent, a testament to the power of courage and the enduring spirit of those who had once been trapped within its walls. It was a typical Friday night for Alex, a pizza delivery driver in the bustling city. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter and music, and the aroma of food wafted through the air. As he pulled into the parking lot of the pizzeria, his phone buzzed with a new order. It was a large pepperoni pizza destined for a high-rise building downtown. Easy money, he thought, grabbing the pizza and heading out. The building loomed ahead, a towering structure of glass and steel that sparkled under the city lights. He parked and made his way inside, the lobby bustling with residents and their guests. After a quick chat with the doorman, he hopped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 14th floor. As the elevator ascended, Alex felt a strange sensation, as if the air had thickened around him. The doors opened with a soft ding, but instead of the lively atmosphere he expected, he was met with an eerie silence. The hallway was dimly lit, and the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. "Hello?" he called out, but his voice echoed back to him, swallowed by the stillness. He stepped out of the elevator, glancing at the apartment numbers. The one he was looking for was 14B. He walked down the corridor, but the further he went, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to close in around him, and he could hear faint whispers, like distant conversations just out of reach. He reached 14B and knocked on the door. "Pizza delivery," he announced, but there was no response. He knocked again, harder this time, but still nothing. A sense of unease crept over him. He pulled out his phone to check the order details, but the screen flickered and went dark. "Great," he muttered, pocketing the phone. Just as he turned to head back to the elevator, the doors slid shut behind him with a soft thud. Panic surged through him. "Hey! Wait!" He shouted, but the elevator was gone, leaving him stranded on this dark floor. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a storm, and he felt a chill run down his spine. "Get out," a voice hissed, barely audible above the cacophony. Alex's heart raced as he turned to look down the hallway. The shadows seemed to shift and dance, and he could have sworn he saw figures moving just out of sight. He took a step back, feeling the weight of the building's history pressing down on him. He needed to find a way back. He turned and sprinted down the hallway, searching for another staircase or exit. The whispers followed him, growing more frantic. "Help us, find us," they pleaded, echoing off the walls. He felt a sense of dread wash over him, realizing he was not alone. As he reached the end of the corridor, he found a door marked "Stairs." He yanked it open and rushed inside, hoping to find a way down. The stairwell was dimly lit, and the air was stale. He descended quickly, but as he reached the landing for the 13th floor, he heard a loud bang behind him. The door had slammed shut, trapping him in the stairwell. "Come on," he shouted, pounding on the door. "Let me out." But there was no response. The whispers grew louder, echoing in his mind. You shouldn't have come here, you shouldn't have come here. Desperation clawed at him as he continued down the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. He reached the ground floor, but when he opened the door, he found himself back in the dim hallway of the 14th floor. The elevator doors were closed, and the whispers surrounded him once more. Help us, they cried, and Alex felt a wave of sorrow wash over him. He realized that the voices belonged to those who had vanished in the building, trapped in a cycle of despair. He had to break the cycle. Gathering his courage, he closed his eyes and focused on the whispers. I'm here to help you, he said aloud. Tell me what to do. The whispers quieted, and he felt a strange warmth envelop him, as if the spirits were guiding him. Find the source, the heart of the building. A voice urged. Free us. With renewed determination, Alex retraced his steps back to the 14th floor. He searched for anything that might hold the key to their release. As he approached the end of the hallway, he noticed a door that had been partially hidden in the shadows. It was unmarked, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, filled with old furniture and dust-covered relics. In the center stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface clouded with grime. The frame was intricately carved, depicting scenes of people in distress, their faces twisted in fear. Alex felt a pull toward the mirror, as if it were calling to him. The whispers grew louder, urging him to approach. He stepped closer, peering into the murky glass. As he wiped away the dust with his sleeve, the reflection began to shift. Instead of his own image, he saw the faces of those who had vanished. People trapped in the building's dark history. Their eyes were wide with terror, and they reached out to him, mouths moving in silent pleas. Help us, they cried, their voices merging into a haunting chorus. You must break the curse. Alex's heart raced as he realized that the mirror was a portal, a gateway to the souls trapped within the building. He needed to find a way to free them. How do I do it? He shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. Speak the truth, a voice echoed from the depths of the mirror. Only then can we be released. Taking a deep breath, Alex focused on the faces before him. You are not alone, he said, his voice steady. I will help you find peace. You deserve to be free. As he spoke, the mirror began to shimmer, the images of the trapped souls flickering like candle flames. The whispers intensified, swirling around him like a tempest. The heart of the building, the heart of the building, they chanted, urging him to continue. Alex felt a surge of energy coursing through him, and he knew he had to dig deeper. I see you, he said, his voice rising above the chaos. I see your pain, your fear. You are not forgotten. I will not leave you here. With each word, the mirror glowed brighter, illuminating the room with a warm light. Suddenly, the mirror cracked, and a blinding flash erupted from its surface. Alex shielded his eyes, and when he looked back, the room was transformed. The darkness had lifted, and the trapped souls were now free, their faces serene and grateful. Thank you, they whispered in unison, their voices now filled with relief. You have set us free. As the last echoes of their gratitude faded, the mirror shattered completely, and the room began to dissolve around him. Alex felt himself being pulled back, the walls of the building fading away like mist. He closed his eyes, bracing for impact. When he opened them again, he found himself standing in the lobby of the high-rise, the sounds of the bustling city filtering in through the glass doors. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive weight that had hung over him was gone. He glanced around, half expecting to see the trapped souls lingering, but they were nowhere to be found. The elevator doors opened, and a few residents stepped out, chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened. Alex felt a sense of disbelief wash over him. Had it all been a dream? He looked down at the pizza box still clutched in his hand, now empty and unremarkable. "Hey, man, you okay?" a fellow delivery driver asked, noticing the look of confusion on Alex's face. "Yeah, I think so," Alex replied, still trying to process the night's events. "Just had a strange delivery." As he walked back to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had been part of something significant. The building had a history, a dark past that he had glimpsed but could never fully understand. He knew he would never forget the faces of those he had freed, nor the whispers that had guided him. From that day forward, Alex became more than just a pizza delivery driver. He became a storyteller, sharing his experience with others. He warned them about the hidden histories of the places they frequented, reminding them that sometimes, the most ordinary locations could hold extraordinary secrets. And as for the high-rise building, it stood tall and proud, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The whispers that once echoed through its halls had faded into silence, replaced by the laughter and life of those who now called it home. Alex knew that he had made a difference, and in doing so, he had found a purpose beyond delivering pizzas. He had become a guardian of stories, a keeper of the memories that lingered in the shadows. It was Halloween night, and a group of friends gathered at Sarah's house for their annual spooky party. The air was filled with laughter, the scent of pumpkin spice, and the flickering glow of jack-o'-lanterns lining the porch. They had decorated the living room with cobwebs, fake spiders, and eerie sound effects that echoed through the house. As the night wore on, they decided it was time to order pizza to fuel their festivities. "Let's get something extra cheesy," Jake suggested, his eyes gleaming with excitement. The group quickly agreed, and Sarah placed the order, giggling as she added a few extra toppings for good measure. They eagerly awaited the arrival of their feast, sharing ghost stories and daring each other to venture into the dark backyard. When the doorbell rang, the friends rushed to the door, their excitement palpable. Sarah opened it to reveal a delivery driver who looked pale and shaken, his eyes wide with fear. He clutched the pizza box tightly, as if it were a ticking time bomb. Hey, here's your pizza," he stammered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "But you need to be careful. This pizza, it's cursed." The friends exchanged amused glances, chuckling at the driver's apparent overreaction. "Cursed? Come on, man, it's just pizza." Jake laughed, taking the box from the driver. "Thanks for the warning, though." The driver hesitated, his expression serious. "I'm not joking. I've seen things, terrible things. Just don't eat it. Please." With that, he turned and hurried back to his car, leaving the friend standing in the doorway, bewildered. "Wow, what a weirdo," Sarah said, rolling her eyes. "Let's dig in." They gathered around the table, the pizza box opened to reveal a steaming pie topped with an unusual assortment of ingredients, black olives, ghost pepper flakes, and a strange green sauce that glimmered ominously. Despite the driver's warning, the friends were too hungry and excited to care. As they took their first bites, laughter filled the room, but it was short-lived. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted. Jake was the first to notice something strange. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, and the room began to spin. Guys, I don't feel so good," he muttered, clutching his head. Maybe you ate too fast, Sarah teased, but her laughter faded as she noticed Jake's face turning pale. Suddenly, he gasped, pointing at the mirror hanging on the wall. "What the hell is that?" The others turned to look, and their laughter died in their throats. In the reflection, they saw the delivery driver's ghostly face staring back at them, his eyes wide with terror. "Get out," he mouthed silently, his expression pleading. "What the—" Sarah started, but before she could finish, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. A cold breeze swept through, sending shivers down their spines. When the lights returned, Jake was gone. "Jake?" Sarah called out, panic rising in her voice. "Where did he go?" The remaining friends exchanged worried glances, and just as they were about to search for him, they heard a faint whisper echoing through the room. "Help me, help me. Did you hear that?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. "What's happening?" One by one, they began to experience terrifying hallucinations. Sarah saw shadows creeping along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach for her. Mark caught glimpses of the delivery driver's face in every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, even the shiny surface of the pizza box. Each time, the driver's expression was more desperate, more frantic. "Guys, we need to get out of here," Sarah shouted, her heart racing. "This is insane." But as they tried to leave, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. "You shouldn't have eaten it, you shouldn't have eaten it," they chanted, echoing the driver's warning. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped in a nightmare of their own making. The pizza, once a source of joy, had become a vessel for something dark and malevolent. They could feel the presence of the driver, his spirit entwined with the cursed food, seeking revenge for the fate he had suffered. "Jake!" Mark shouted, desperation in his voice. "Where are you?" Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and Jake reappeared, but he looked different, hollow, his eyes sunken and filled with fear. "Get out! You have to get out," he screamed, but his voice was distorted, as if he were trapped in a nightmare of his own. The friends recoiled in horror, realizing that Jake was not the same person they had known just moments before. His skin was pale, and he seemed to flicker in and out of existence, as if he were a ghost himself. "Jake, what happened to you?" Sarah cried, tears welling in her eyes. "The pizza, it's alive," he gasped, his voice trembling. "It feeds on fear. You have to get out before it takes you too." The room began to warp around them, the walls closing in as the whispers grew louder, drowning out their thoughts. Shadows danced along the floor, creeping closer, and the friends felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over them. They were losing their grip on reality. "Stay together," Mark shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand. "We need to find a way out." They rushed toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if an invisible force was holding it shut. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, and the ghostly face of the delivery driver appeared in the air before them, his expression twisted in anguish. "Help me," he cried, his voice echoing through the chaos. "You must break the curse." "Break the curse?" Sarah shouted back, her heart racing. "How do we do that?" "Destroy the pizza." Jake's voice echoed, filled with urgency. "It's the source of the curse." With newfound determination, the friends turned back to the table where cursed pizza lay, its surface shimmering ominously. They could see the eyes of the delivery driver reflected in the cheese, pleading for release. On three. Mark shouted, rallying the group. 1, 2, 3. They lunged for the pizza, grabbing plates and utensils, ready to destroy it. As they tore into the pie, the room shook violently, and the whispers turned into screams. The shadows writhed and twisted, trying to pull them back, but they pressed on, determined to free themselves from the curse. With each slice they tore away, the ghostly face of the delivery driver grew clearer, his expression shifting from anguish to hope. Yes. Yes. You're doing it, he urged, his voice rising above the chaos. Finally, with one last effort, they lifted the pizza box and hurled it against the wall. The box exploded in a shower of cheese and toppings, and a blinding light filled the room. The screams of the shadows faded into silence, and the oppressive weight that had held them captive lifted. As the light dimmed, the friends found themselves back in the living room, the pizza box gone, and the atmosphere returned to normal. The flickering light stabilized, and the whispers had vanished. They were free. Did we do it? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Jake, still looking shaken but more solid than before, nodded. I think so. I think we broke the curse. But just as they began to breathe a sigh of relief, the doorbell rang again. The friends exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to expect. Should we answer it? Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's just another delivery, Jake suggested, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. With a deep breath, Sarah walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was the same delivery driver, looking just as pale and shaken as before. You shouldn't have eaten it, he said, his voice low and serious. You need to leave this place. It's not safe. The friends stared at him, their hearts racing. We already dealt with it. Mark exclaimed. We broke the curse. The driver's eyes widened in disbelief. You don't understand. The curse isn't just about the pizza. It's tied to this building. It feeds on fear and despair. You may have escaped tonight, but it will come back for you. As the driver spoke, the lights flickered ominously again, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and twist. The friends felt a chill run down their spines, realizing that their ordeal was far from over. Get out while you can, the driver urged, stepping back into the darkness. Before it's too late. With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving the friends standing in the doorway, hearts pounding and minds racing. They knew they had to leave, but the question loomed, where could they go to escape the curse that had followed them home? As they gathered their things, the friends exchanged determined glances. They had faced the darkness together once. It was a typical Saturday evening when Tom, a pizza delivery driver, received an order for a large meat lover's pizza from a house on the outskirts of town. The address was familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. He shrugged it off and grabbed the pizza, eager to make the delivery and head home for the night. As he drove through the quiet neighborhood, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets. The house he arrived at was a quaint, two-story home with a well-kept garden. A flickering porch light illuminated the front door, and Tom felt a sense of normalcy as he approached. He knocked, and a woman in her 40s answered, her smile warm and inviting. Thank you for coming. We've been looking forward to this all day, she said, taking the pizza from him. Tom noticed her husband and two children peeking from behind her, their faces lit with excitement. Enjoy, Tom said, waving goodbye as he turned to leave. But as he walked back to his car, he felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching him. He glanced back at the family, who had already gathered around the table, eagerly opening the pizza box. The aroma wafted through the air, rich and savory. Later that night, Tom returned to the pizzeria, but something felt off. He couldn't shake the image of the family from his mind. They had seemed so normal, yet there was an unsettling energy about them. As he cleaned up after his shift, he overheard a couple of co-workers talking about strange occurrences in the neighborhood. "Did you hear about the Johnsons?" one of them said. "They've been acting weird since they moved in. People say they're cursed or something." Tom's curiosity piqued. "Cursed? What do you mean?" he asked, leaning in. "They say a witch lived in that house before them. She was into some dark stuff, and when she left, she put a curse on the place. Anyone who lives there starts acting strange after a while," his coworker explained. Tom's heart raced as he recalled the family's eager faces and the way they had devoured the pizza. He felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be that the pizza he delivered had something to do with it? The next day, he decided to check on the family. He drove back to the house, his heart pounding with a mix of concern and dread. As he approached, he noticed the front yard was overgrown, and the windows were dark. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Feeling uneasy, he peered through a window and gasped. Inside, the family was gathered in the living room, but they were not the same. They were moving erratically, their bodies twitching and jerking as if they were puppets on strings. Their eyes were wide and unfocused, and they were mumbling incoherently, a mix of words that sounded like a foreign language. "Help us, they chanted, their voices overlapping in a haunting melody. Tom's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. He needed to find out what had happened. He remembered the witch and the rumors surrounding the house. He drove to the local library, hoping to uncover more about the family and the curse. After hours of searching through old records and dusty books, he stumbled upon a faded newspaper article about the witch who had lived in the house decades ago. The article detailed her dark practices, including the use of a special ingredient in her cooking that was said to awaken dark forces within those who consumed it. The ingredient was a rare herb known as nightshade, which could induce madness and hallucinations. Tom's stomach churned as he connected the dots. The pizza he had delivered must have contained this cursed ingredient, and the family had unwittingly consumed it. He knew he had to act quickly to save them. Returning to the house, he knocked frantically on the door, but there was still no response. Desperate, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The scene was even more chaotic than before. The family was now on the floor, writhing and mumbling, their faces twisted in fear. "Please, you have to listen to me," Tom shouted, trying to get their attention. "I know what's happening. You've been cursed." The family paused, their eyes locking onto him, but they didn't seem to recognize him. Instead, they continued to chant, their voices rising in intensity. Tom felt a wave of panic wash over him, but he couldn't give up. He remembered the article mentioning a way to break the curse, a cleansing ritual that involved burning the nightshade herb and reciting a specific incantation. He needed to find the herb and perform the ritual before it was too late. Rushing back to his car, Tom drove to the nearest herbal store, his heart racing. He burst through the door, breathless and frantic. "Do you have nightshade?" he asked the shopkeeper, desperation lacing his voice. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with sharp eyes, raised an eyebrow. "Nightshade? That's a dangerous herb. What do you need it for?" "There's a family in trouble. They've been cursed, and I think it's because of a pizza I delivered." Tom explained, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I need to perform a cleansing ritual to save them." The woman studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I have some, but you must be careful. It can be toxic if not handled properly." She led him to a back room filled with jars of dried herbs. After a few moments, she handed him a small pouch containing the dark, leafy herb. "Use it wisely." Tom thanked her and rushed back to the family's house, clutching the pouch tightly. As he arrived, he could still hear the eerie chanting echoing from within. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Inside, the family was still in disarray, their movements erratic and their voices rising in a chaotic symphony. Tom quickly set to work, gathering some old candles he found in the living room and placing them in a circle on the floor. He opened the pouch and carefully sprinkled the nightshade leaves into the center of the circle. "Please, listen to me," he shouted, trying to break through the madness. "I'm here to help you." The family paused momentarily, their eyes flickering with recognition, but the darkness seemed to pull them back into its grip. Tom lit the candles, their flames flickering in the dim light, and began to recite the incantation he had memorized from the article. "By the light of the flame, I call upon the spirits of the night. Release this family from their plight. By the power of the herb, I cleanse this place, and banish the darkness that haunts this space." As he spoke, the air around him began to shimmer, and the shadows in the room seemed to writhe and twist. The family's chanting grew louder, but Tom pressed on, pouring all his energy into the words. "Let the curse be broken, let the spirits be free. I call upon the light to restore harmony." Suddenly, the candles flared brightly, illuminating the room in a warm glow. The shadows recoiled, and the family's movements began to slow. Tom could see the confusion in their eyes as they fought against the dark forces that had taken hold of them. "Fight it. You can do this," he urged, his voice rising above the chaos. "You're stronger than this curse." With one final surge of energy, Tom finished the incantation. The flames erupted in a blinding light, and a powerful gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. The shadows dissipated, and the family collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Tom rushed to their side, helping them sit up. The mother looked at him, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "What happened?" We couldn't control ourselves." "You were cursed," Tom explained, his heart racing. "The pizza I delivered had a secret ingredient that awakened dark forces within you. But I think I broke the curse." The family exchanged worried glances, and Tom could see the fear slowly fading from their faces. "Thank you," the father said, his voice trembling. "We felt like we were losing ourselves." As they gathered themselves, Tom felt a wave of relief wash over him. The darkness that had enveloped the house was gone, replaced by a sense of calm. The family was safe. "Let's get you some water and sit down," Tom suggested, helping them to their feet. "You need to rest and recover." As they moved to the kitchen, the family began to share their experience, recounting the strange visions and feelings of dread that had consumed them. Tom listened intently, relieved that they were back to their normal selves. After a while, the family expressed their gratitude, offering Tom a slice of pizza from a fresh pie they had ordered as a thank you. He hesitated, remembering the previous night's events, but they assured him it was safe. "Just a regular pizza this time," the mother laughed, her eyes sparkling with relief. "No secret ingredients, I promise." It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when Jake, a delivery driver for a local courier service, received an unusual call. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. "Jake, we've got a delivery to 42 Wisteria Lane. It's a bit off the grid, but the customer insists it's urgent." Jake frowned, flipping through his map app. "I don't see a Wisteria Lane anywhere near here." "Are you sure about that? Just follow the GPS directions." "It's a new development," the dispatcher replied, sounding slightly annoyed. With a shrug, Jake set off, his curiosity piqued. The GPS led him down winding roads, past fields that seemed to stretch endlessly, until he finally arrived at a clearing. There, standing alone, was a door, an ornate, wooden door with intricate carvings that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. It stood against nothing, as if it had been plucked from a fairy tale and placed in the middle of nowhere. Jake stepped out of his van, scratching his head. "This can't be right," he muttered. He approached the door cautiously, half expecting it to vanish before his eyes. But it remained steadfast, inviting yet foreboding. He knocked, and the door creaked open, revealing a swirling vortex of colors and sounds that defied description. A figure emerged, a being with iridescent skin and eyes that sparkled like stars. "You must be the delivery driver," it exclaimed, its voice melodic and echoing. Yeah. I have a package for, you?" Jake stammered, holding up the box he had been tasked to deliver. It was a standard delivery, but the contents were a mystery to him. Come in," the creature urged, gesturing with elongated fingers. "I am Xylith, and I have been eagerly awaiting this delivery." Jake hesitated, glancing back at his van. "I don't think I can go in there. It looks different." Different is an understatement. Xylith laughed, a sound that resonated like chimes in the wind. "But you must understand, this is a matter of great importance. The package contains the essence of our realm, and without it, chaos will reign." With a deep breath, Jake stepped through the door, and the world around him shifted. He found himself in a vibrant landscape filled with bizarre creatures. Some floated, others crawled, and a few even danced in the air. The sky was a kaleidoscope of colors, and the ground pulsed with a life of its own. "Wow," Jake breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is incredible." Xylith led him through the bustling marketplace, where creatures bartered with strange items, glowing orbs, shimmering fabrics, and even bottled laughter. "Now, for your payment," Xylith said, pulling out a pouch filled with what looked like small, luminescent stones. "What are these?" Jake asked, intrigued. "Currency from our dimension," Xylith explained. "Each stone holds value in our realm. You can trade them for goods or services in your world, but be careful. They are not easily understood by your kind." Jake nodded, pocketing a few stones. "Thanks, I guess." Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted nearby. A group of creatures was arguing over a particularly large orb that glowed ominously. Xylith's expression shifted to concern. "We must leave. The balance is fragile here, and conflict can lead to dire consequences." Before Jake could respond, Xylith grabbed his hand, and they dashed through the crowd. The laughter of the creatures echoed behind them, a haunting melody that sent shivers down Jake's spine. He could feel the energy of the dimension shifting, and panic began to set in. As they reached the door, Jake glanced back at the chaos unfolding. "What about the package?" he shouted. "Leave it. It's too dangerous," Xylith urged, pulling him through the door just as a wave of energy surged behind them. They stumbled back into the clearing, the door slamming shut with a resounding thud. Jake gasped for breath, his heart racing. What just happened? Xylith looked at him, a mix of relief and amusement on its face. You have escaped the chaos, but the echoes of our realm will always linger. Remember, not all deliveries are meant for your world. Jake nodded, still trying to process the experience. I think I'll stick to regular deliveries from now on. As he climbed back into his van, he could still hear the distant laughter from the other side of the door, a reminder of the strange adventure he had just experienced. With a final glance at the mysterious door, he drove away, the luminescent stones in his pocket glimmering softly, a secret he would carry with him forever. Back in the familiar streets of his town, Jake tried to shake off the surreal experience. He delivered the rest of his packages, but his mind kept drifting back to the alternate dimension. The vibrant colors, the bizarre creatures, and the echoes of laughter haunted him. He couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if he had stayed longer or if he had taken the package with him. That night, as he lay in bed, the luminescent stones glowed faintly on his nightstand, casting a soft light across the room. He picked one up, examining its surface. It felt warm to the touch, pulsing gently as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Curiosity gnawed at him. What if he could return? What if he could explore that world further? The next day, Jake decided to do some research. He scoured the internet for anything related to alternate dimensions, strange currencies, or even the peculiar creatures he had encountered. To his dismay, he found nothing. It was as if the experience had been a dream, a figment of his imagination. But the stones remained, tangible proof that something extraordinary had happened. Days turned into weeks, and Jake found himself increasingly distracted at work. He began to notice odd occurrences around him, shadows that moved independently, whispers in the wind, and fleeting glimpses of strange figures at the edge of his vision. It was as if the boundary between his world and Xylith's was thinning. One evening, driven by an insatiable urge, Jake returned to the clearing. The door stood as he had left it, untouched by time. Heart pounding, he approached it once more. He could hear the faint echoes of laughter, a siren call that beckoned him to step through. With a deep breath, he knocked again. The door swung open, revealing the swirling colors and sounds of the alternate dimension. Xylith appeared almost instantly, a wide grin on its face. You've returned. I knew you would. I had to come back, Jake admitted, stepping inside. I need to know more about this place. Xylith clapped its hands together, and the air shimmered with excitement. Then let us explore. There is much to show you, and the balance is still fragile. We need someone from your world to help us. As they ventured deeper into the realm, Jake learned about the delicate ecosystem that sustained the dimension. He discovered that the essence contained in the package he had delivered was crucial for maintaining harmony among the creatures. Without it, chaos would reign, and the fabric of their world would unravel. Together, they visited the marketplace, where Jake helped Xylith negotiate trades with other beings. He learned to communicate with them, understanding their needs and desires. The luminescent stones became a bridge between their worlds, allowing him to facilitate exchanges that benefited both dimensions. But as Jake immersed himself in this new life, he began to notice a growing darkness. Creatures that had once been vibrant and joyful were now becoming restless and aggressive. Xylith confided in him that a powerful entity, known as the Shadow Weaver, was attempting to seize control of the realm, feeding off the chaos and despair. We need your help, Jake, Xylith said urgently. You have a unique perspective that can help us find a solution. Together, we can confront the Shadow Weaver and restore balance. Determined to protect both worlds, Jake rallied the creatures he had befriended. They devised a plan to confront the Shadow Weaver, combining their strengths and knowledge. As they approached the lair of the Shadow Weaver, a dark, swirling vortex loomed before them, pulsating with malevolence. The battle that ensued was fierce. Creatures of light clashed with shadows, and Jake found himself at the center of it all. Drawing on the power of the luminescent stones, he channeled their energy, creating a barrier of light that pushed back against the darkness. Xylith and the others fought valiantly by his side, their determination unwavering. In a final, desperate move, Jake focused all his energy into the stones, unleashing a brilliant wave of light that engulfed the Shadow Weaver. The darkness writhed and shrieked, but the light was too strong. With a final burst, the Shadow Weaver was vanquished, and the realm began to heal. As the colors returned to the landscape and laughter filled the air once more, Jake felt a sense. It was a chilly Friday night, and a group of friends had gathered at Mark's house for what was supposed to be a fun pizza party. Laughter and chatter filled the air as they settled in for a night of horror movies, snacks, and, of course, pizza. They had ordered a large pepperoni and extra cheese, their favorite, and eagerly awaited its arrival. Meanwhile, Jake, the delivery driver, was on his way to the address. He had been working long hours, and the thought of delivering a pizza to a lively party was a welcome distraction. As he pulled up to the house, he noticed the lights flickering inside, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just the excitement of the night. Jake knocked on the door, but there was no response. He could hear muffled voices and the sound of a TV blaring inside. Curious, he pushed the door open slightly, calling out, "Pizza delivery." Inside, the living room was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the flickering screen. The friends were seated in a semicircle, their eyes glued to the TV, completely entranced. The movie playing was a classic horror flick, filled with jump scares and unsettling imagery. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he took in the scene. "Hey! Guys," he shouted, waving the pizza box in front of them. "Your pizza's here." But they didn't respond. Their faces were pale, and their expressions were blank, as if they were in a trance. Jake stepped further inside, feeling an unsettling sensation wash over him. The air felt thick, almost electric, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift and dance. "Guys, come on. Your pizza," he tried again, louder this time. Still, there was no reaction. The friends were completely absorbed in the movie, their bodies rigid, as if they were puppets with their strings cut. Feeling a sense of unease, Jake turned to leave, but as he did, he felt a sudden coldness wrap around his ankle. He looked down to see a pale, bony hand gripping him tightly, its fingers digging into his skin. Panic surged through him as he tried to shake it off, but the grip only tightened. "Let go of me," he shouted, stumbling backward. The friends remained oblivious, their eyes still fixed on the screen, which now seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The images flickered and twisted, and Jake could swear he saw shadows moving within the screen, reaching out toward him. With a surge of adrenaline, he yanked his foot free, but the hand released him only to be replaced by a chilling whisper that echoed through the room. "Stay with us." Jake's heart raced as he bolted for the door, the pizza box clutched tightly in his hands. He could feel the cold presence behind him, a malevolent force that seemed to want to pull him back into the house. He burst through the door and stumbled onto the porch, gasping for breath. "Get out! Get out!" he shouted, hoping to break the spell that had ensnared his friends. He turned to see them still. Sitting there, their faces pale and expressionless, as if they were mere shells of their former selves. Desperate, Jake grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his hands shaking. "I need help. There's something wrong with my friends. They're not themselves." As he spoke, he glanced back at the house. The flickering light from the TV had intensified, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out toward him. The whispering grew louder, a cacophony of voices urging him to return. "Join us, stay with us." Suddenly, the front door swung open, and one of his friends, Sarah, stepped out, her eyes wide and unfocused. "Jake? What's going on?" she asked, her voice distant. "Sarah." "Thank God," he exclaimed, rushing toward her. "You need to get away from the TV. It's not safe." But as he reached her, he felt the cold grip return, this time wrapping around his wrist. He looked down to see the same bony hand emerging from the shadows, pulling him back toward the house. "No! Let me go!" he yelled, struggling against the unseen force. "Jake, what are you talking about?" Sarah asked, her voice still distant, as if she were fighting to break free from the trance. "We were just watching a movie." "Don't go back in there," he pleaded, but the grip tightened, dragging him closer to the threshold. The shadows danced around him, whispering promises of eternal entertainment, of never-ending horror that would keep him enthralled forever. In a moment of clarity, Sarah shook her head, as if waking from a dream. "Jake! Fight it," she shouted, her voice breaking through the haze. "We have to get out of here." With a sudden burst of determination, Sarah lunged forward, grabbing Jake's other arm. The cold grip around his wrist faltered for just a moment, and that was all the opening he needed. He pulled away from the shadows, feeling the icy fingers slip from his skin as he and Sarah stumbled backward onto the porch. "Run!" Jake shouted, and without hesitation, they sprinted away from the house, their hearts pounding in their chests. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices filled with rage and despair. The flickering light from the TV cast eerie shadows that seemed to reach out, trying to ensnare them once more. As they reached the edge of the yard, Jake glanced back at the house. The front door stood wide open, and he could see the other friends still seated in front of the TV, their faces blank and lifeless. "We can't leave them," he cried, panic rising in his throat. "We have to," Sarah insisted, pulling him away. "They're not themselves. We need to get help." Reluctantly, Jake nodded, and they ran to his van parked at the curb. He fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking as he tried to unlock the door. Come on," he muttered, finally managing to get the door open. They jumped inside, and Jake started the engine, the sound of the van roaring to life cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Anywhere but here," Jake replied, slamming the gear into drive and speeding away from the house. As they drove, the whispers faded into the distance, but the sense of dread lingered in the air. After a few minutes, they pulled into a well-lit gas station. Jake parked and turned to Sarah, who was still visibly shaken. "We need to call the police or someone who can help," he said, his voice steadying. "They need to know what's happening." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "But what do we tell them? That our friends are possessed by a horror movie?" "Something like that," Jake replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the gravity of the situation. "We just need to get them out of that house." They stepped inside the gas station, and Jake approached the cashier, a middle-aged man with a skeptical look. "We need to call the police. There's something wrong with my friends. They're in a trance at my buddy's house." The cashier raised an eyebrow but handed Jake the phone. "You might want to hurry. It's getting late, and I don't want any trouble." Jake dialed 911, explaining the situation as best as he could. The operator listened intently, assuring him that help was on the way. After hanging up, he turned to Sarah, who was pacing anxiously. "They're sending someone. We just have to wait." As they stood outside the gas station, the night air felt heavy, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "What if they don't believe us?" he asked, his voice low. "They have to," Sarah replied, her determination shining through. "We saw what happened. We can't let them stay in that house." Just then, the sound of sirens pierced the night, and Jake's heart raced with a mix of relief and anxiety. A police car pulled into the gas station parking lot, and two officers stepped out, their expressions serious. "Which house?" one of the officers asked, scanning the area. "Just down the road," Jake said, pointing. "The one with the flickering lights. My friends are inside, and they're not themselves." The officers exchanged glances before nodding. "Lead the way." Jake and Sarah hurried back to the van, the officers following closely behind. As they drove back to the house, Jake felt a knot of fear in his stomach. What if the officers couldn't help? What if the shadows were still lurking, waiting for their chance to reclaim their victims? When they arrived, the house loomed ominously in the darkness, the flickering light from the TV casting an eerie glow. The officers approached cautiously, weapons drawn, while Jake and Sarah stayed close behind. "Stay here," one of the officers instructed, moving toward the door. The other officer followed, and they stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jake and Sarah waited outside, their hearts pounding in their chests. The minutes felt like hours as they listened. It was a rainy evening when Alex, a delivery driver for a local pizzeria, received a call for a delivery to a house on the outskirts of town. The address was familiar, a place he had visited several times before, but tonight felt different. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of raindrops tapping against his windshield created a somber rhythm. As he pulled up to the house, he noticed the dim light flickering in the window. He grabbed the pizza from the back seat, a large pepperoni with extra cheese, and made his way to the front door. He knocked, and after a moment, the door creaked open to reveal a man in his late 30s, disheveled and with dark circles under his eyes. "Hi, I have your pizza," Alex said, forcing a smile despite the man's somber demeanor. "Thank you," the man replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He stepped aside, allowing Alex to enter. The living room was cluttered, filled with remnants of a life once vibrant but now seemingly abandoned. The TV flickered in the background, casting shadows on the walls. As Alex handed over the pizza, he noticed the man's hands trembled slightly. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. The man sighed deeply, his gaze dropping to the floor. "No, not really. I've made a terrible mistake," he confessed, his voice cracking. "I don't know how to live with it." Alex felt a pang of empathy. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do?" The man looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't think so. But, would you like a slice of pizza? It's the least I can offer." Surprised by the offer, Alex hesitated but then nodded. "Sure, I'd appreciate that." The man retrieved a plate and placed a single slice on it, the cheese still bubbling and the pepperoni glistening. He handed it to Alex, who took a bite, savoring the familiar flavors. But as he chewed, something strange happened. A wave of emotions washed over him, overwhelming his senses. Suddenly, he was no longer in the man's living room. Instead, he found himself standing in a dimly lit alley, the air thick with tension. He could see the man from earlier, but he was younger, perhaps in his 20s, and he was arguing with someone. The scene unfolded like a movie, and Alex was a silent observer, feeling the man's emotions as if they were his own. "Just give me the money," the younger man shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "I need it for my family." The other figure, a tall man with a menacing presence, shook his head. "You think you can just take from me? You're nothing but a coward." The argument escalated, and Alex felt the younger man's fear and anger boiling over. He watched as the confrontation turned violent, the tall man shoving the younger man against the wall. In that moment, Alex felt a surge of regret and sorrow, as if he were experiencing the weight of a lifetime of mistakes. The scene shifted again, and Alex found himself in a hospital room, the sterile smell overwhelming. The younger man sat in a chair, his face buried in his hands, tears streaming down his cheeks. A woman lay in a hospital bed, unconscious, connected to machines that beeped rhythmically. The younger man's heartache was palpable, and Alex realized with a jolt that the woman was his mother. "Please, don't leave me," the younger man whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." The memories flooded Alex's mind, moments of joy, laughter, and love shared between the mother and son, now overshadowed by the tragedy that had unfolded. He felt the weight of guilt pressing down on him, the realization that the younger man's desperate actions had led to this moment of despair. As the memories continued to unravel, Alex saw the aftermath of the confrontation. The younger man was arrested, his life spiraling out of control as he struggled with the consequences of his choices. He lost his job, his family, and ultimately, his mother. The pain of regret consumed him, and Alex could feel it wrapping around his heart like a vice. Suddenly, Alex was back in the man's living room, the slice of pizza still in his hand. He looked at the man, who was now staring at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alex nodded slowly, still reeling from the emotional journey. "I saw everything. I'm so sorry for what happened to you." The man's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was desperate. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. I lost everything that night, my mother, my family, my future. I've been living with that regret ever since." Alex felt a deep sense of empathy for the man. You can't change the past, but you can try to make amends. It's never too late to seek forgiveness or to find a way to heal. The man looked down at the floor, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his sorrow. "I've tried. I've gone to therapy, but the guilt is always there. I can't escape it. I thought maybe sharing this pizza with you would somehow lighten the burden, but it just reminds me of what I've lost." Alex took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "You're not alone in this. You've carried this weight for so long, but it's okay to seek help. You can still honor your mother's memory by living a life that she would be proud of. It's not about forgetting, it's about finding a way to move forward." The man looked up, his eyes searching Alex's face for sincerity. "Do you really think I can? That I can find a way to forgive myself?" "I believe you can," Alex replied earnestly. It won't be easy, but you have to start somewhere. Maybe it begins with talking to someone who can help you process this pain. You deserve a chance to heal. For the first time, a flicker of hope crossed the man's face. You're right. I've been so consumed by my regret that I forgot I could still change my future. Thank you for listening. I didn't expect this delivery to turn into a therapy session. Alex chuckled softly, relieved to see a glimmer of light in the man's eyes. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness can lead to unexpected conversations. Just remember, it's okay to reach out for help. The man nodded, wiping away a tear. I will. I promise. I'll start by calling a therapist tomorrow. I need to face this head-on. As they stood in the dimly lit living room, the atmosphere shifted. The weight of sorrow that had filled the space began to lift, replaced by a sense of possibility. Alex felt a connection to the man, a shared understanding of the burdens that life could impose. Thank you for the pizza, Alex said, glancing at the half-eaten slice on the plate. And for sharing your story with me. It means more than you know. The man smiled faintly, a genuine expression that seemed to break through the layers of regret. Thank you for listening. I didn't think anyone would care. As Alex turned to leave, he paused at the door, looking back at the man. Remember, it's never too late to start anew. You have the power to change your story. With that, he stepped out into the rain, the cool droplets washing over him as he walked to his van. He felt a sense of relief, knowing that he had made a small difference in someone's life, even if just for a moment. As he drove away, the man's house fading into the distance, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had been part of something significant. The memories he had experienced through that slice of pizza had opened his eyes to the complexities of human emotion and the weight of regret. He hoped that the man would find the strength to confront his past and embrace the future. After all, everyone deserved a second chance, and sometimes, it took a simple delivery to remind someone of that truth.